Beneath our feet lies a world more alien and unreachable than the farthest reaches of our solar system. For decades, humans have harbored the audacious dream of drilling straight through the heart of the planet. The most famous attempt began in the remote Arctic wilderness of the Soviet Union back in 1970. Scientists and engineers aimed to reach the boundary where the crust meets the mantle, a feat never before achieved. They spent 20 long years grinding through the ancient stone, reaching a staggering depth of 12.3 kilometers. To put that in perspective, the Kola borehole is deeper than the deepest point of the ocean, the Mariana Trench. However, the deeper they went, the more the Earth began to fight back with unexpected ferocity. The temperatures at the bottom reached 180 degrees Celsius, far exceeding the initial predictions of the project's leaders. At this depth, the granite didn't behave like solid rock anymore, it began to ooze like hot plastic. Drill bits snapped like toothpicks, and the hole began to collapse under the sheer weight of the crust above. In 1992, the project was officially abandoned, and the hole was sealed with a simple metal cap. We had barely scratched the surface, reaching only 0.2% of the way to the center. To truly reach the core, we must rethink every aspect of our engineering and our ambition. The crust varies wildly in thickness depending on where you choose to plant your flag. Beneath the continents, the rock layer can be up to 70 kilometers thick, mostly comprised of lighter granite. But under the vast oceans, the crust is much thinner, sometimes only 5 kilometers deep. This oceanic crust is denser and harder to penetrate, but it offers a much shorter path to the mantle. If we are to go deeper than the Soviets ever dreamed, we need to find a location that offers more than just scientific data. We need a location where the rewards justify the astronomical costs of such an endeavor. Imagine a place where the very crust itself is laden with the treasures of the stars. Much of our planet's gold arrived via these ancient impacts, eventually sinking toward the core. But geological forces have pushed some of that wealth back up into the crust where we can reach it. Choosing the wrong spot wouldn't just be expensive, it would be physically impossible to navigate. If we drill at the equator, the Earth's rotation would slam any traveler into the side of the wall almost instantly. This is the Coriolis effect, where different parts of the planet move at vastly different speed. At the equator, you're moving eastward at 1,600 kilometers per hour. To avoid the wall, your tunnel would need to be a complex, mathematically perfect curve. The poles offer a straight shot, but the freezing Arctic and Antarctic environments present their own nightmares. So, we look to the Mid-Cauca Belt in Colombia, a geological titan for mineral wealth.
Here, the crust is thick, but it is also a gateway to massive gold deposits that have been forced upward by tectonic collisions.
Companies like Tiger Gold are already mapping these deep feeder zones to trace the metal back to its origins. But even with the perfect location, the technical challenges remain nearly insurmountable. Conventional rotary drilling will only take us so far before the heat turns our tools into scrap metal. Beyond 9 kilometers, we face a realm where temperatures climb toward 1,000 degrees Celsius. We must transition from physical blades to directed energy, a superpowered heat laser called a gyrotron. This laser doesn't just cut, it vaporizes the stone, clearing a path through the stubborn crust in a matter of months. We are finally ready to push past the limits that stopped the Soviets 30 years ago. But the crust is merely the skin of the apple, a tiny fraction of the journey ahead. Ahead lies the mantle, a vast sea of hot, high-pressure rock that refuses to stay open. If we lose focus for even a second, the Earth will swallow our tunnel whole, burying our dreams under billions of tons of pressure. We have reached the boundary, but the true nightmare of the deep is only just beginning. To puncture the skin of the world, we must first understand that not all ground is created equal. The continental crust is a thick, stubborn layer of granite that stretches up to 70 kilometers deep. Drilling through such a massive barrier would consume decades and trillions in resources. However, beneath the churning waves of our oceans lies a much thinner alternative. Oceanic crust is composed of dense basalt and is often only 7 to 10 kilometers thick. We need a location where the Earth's mantle is practically screaming to break through the surface. Choosing the right spot isn't just about speed, it is about the treasures hidden in the transition zone. As we descend, we will pass through veins of precious metals that could fund 1,000 such expeditions. Our target is the Mohorovičić discontinuity, the boundary where the crust finally gives way to the mantle. But the pressure at these depths is enough to crush a conventional submarine like a soda can. We must stabilize the borehole with a casing made of reinforced carbon nanotubes. Every meter we dig deeper increases the temperature by 25 degrees Celsius. Standard drill bits would melt into useless puddles before even reaching the mantle. Our solution is a plasma arc drill that vaporizes the rock instead of grinding it. This process creates a glass-like coating on the tunnel walls, sealing them against the immense pressure. If we can reach the Moho, we will have conquered the easiest part of the journey. But geological stability is a fickle mistress at the edge of a tectonic plate. We have selected a site near the Mariana Trench where the crust is at its most vulnerable. Here, the weight of the entire Pacific Ocean presses down on our operation. We begin the descent, lowering the primary drill string into the abyss. The first kilometer is easy, passing through soft sediment and ancient marine debris. At 5 kilometers, we hit the hard basaltic layer that forms the ocean's foundation. The vibrations from the drill are registering as minor earthquakes on the surface sensors. We cannot stop now. The momentum of the drill is our only protection against collapse. Unexpectedly, we strike a pocket of superheated steam trapped within the rock. The pressure differential threatens to blow the entire drill assembly out of the hole.
We engage the emergency hydrolocks to stabilize the internal pressure.
The crisis passes, but it serves as a grim reminder of the Earth's hidden power. We are now 7 kilometers down, approaching the theoretical limit of human achievement. The rock here is no longer brittle, it has started to behave like a slow-moving liquid. This plastic state of the rock makes keeping the hole open an engineering nightmare. We must pump a specialized cooling slurry down the shaft to freeze the rock into place. The slurry also carries the pulverized rock fragments back to the surface for analysis. We find traces of rare earth elements in concentrations 10 times higher than any surface mine. Economic viability is confirmed, but the physical costs are mounting. We are now at the very base of the crust, staring into the dark heart of the planet. The Moho is finally within reach, a shimmering gateway to the unknown. Crossing this line means leaving the world of solid ground forever. As the bit breaks through, the sensors register a sound that shouldn't exist, a low, rhythmic thumping. We have found our entry point, but the Earth seems to be breathing back at us. The path is open, yet the physics of what lies ahead defy everything we know about the surface world. The path is open, yet the physics of what lies ahead defy everything we know about the surface world. As we prepare to drop deeper, we encounter a force more invisible and deadly than the heat, the Earth's own rotation. At the equator, the surface beneath your feet is hurtling eastward at a staggering 1,600 kilometers per hour. If you attempted to jump into a straight hole here, the Coriolis effect would be your executioner. You would be slammed into the eastern wall of the tunnel almost immediately as the Earth rotates beneath your falling body. To survive a fall at the equator, the tunnel would require a complex, mathematically precise curve that matches the planet's rotational shift. To avoid this geometric nightmare, we must move our drilling operation to the only place where rotation is zero, the poles. The South Pole sits atop the massive continent of Antarctica, where the crust is an intimidating 40 kilometers thick. However, the North Pole offers a tactical advantage, resting directly over the Gackel Ridge in the middle of the Arctic Ocean. Here, the tectonic plates are pulling apart so slowly that the Earth's crust is less than 4 kilometers thick in certain spots. While the crust is thin, we are now faced with the daunting task of drilling under thousands of meters of freezing water. Once the seal is established, we must address the second invisible enemy, the air within the tunnel itself. As you descend, the weight of the air column above you would create a pressure so immense it would turn the atmosphere into a liquid-like wall. Without a vacuum, the friction of the air against your suit would generate enough heat to incinerate you before you even reached the mantle. We have no choice but to pump every molecule of air out of the 12,000-kilometer shaft to create a perfect void. Now, in the silence of the vacuum, the only thing you hear is the rhythmic beat of your own heart inside your helmet. You lean over the edge of the North Pole entrance, staring down into a hole that pierces the very soul of the planet. With a final check of your life support systems, you step off the platform and begin the long fall. Gravity takes hold instantly, pulling you downward with a relentless and growing force. The crystallized walls of the tunnel reflect the lights of your suit, like a billion tiny diamonds embedded in the rock. You are now passing through the layers of basalt and granite that have guarded the Earth's secrets for eons. Your sensors indicate a sharp rise in the external temperature as you approach the Mohorovičić discontinuity. The transition is visible. The rock is no longer brittle, but starts to show signs of plastic deformation. We are now entering the upper mantle, a 600-kilometer stretch of solid yet flowing peridotite. The speed of your fall is now reaching several hundred kilometers per hour as gravity continues its work. You notice a slight vibration in the suit. The magnetic field of the Earth is starting to interfere with your stabilization thrusters. This is the asthenosphere, where the rock behaves like a viscous fluid over geological timescales. Maintaining the integrity of the tunnel here requires constant energy from the surface gyotrons to keep the walls crystallized. If the power fails for even a second, the pressure of the mantle will collapse the tunnel like a straw being crushed. You pass the 100-kilometer mark, and the darkness of the shaft is now broken by the natural incandescence of the Earth. Your cooling system is working at maximum capacity to keep the interior of your suit at a livable temperature. Far below, you see a flickering light that shouldn't be there, a strange anomaly in the rock structure. Is it a pocket of ancient gases, or perhaps the edge of a massive subducted tectonic plate melting away? You check your speed again? You're now traveling faster than any commercial jet on the surface. Suddenly, a localized seismic wave ripples through the mantle, causing the tunnel to vibrate violently. Your suit's proximity sensors begin to wail as a large piece of debris tumbles toward you in the vacuum. You fire your lateral thrusters, narrowly avoiding the projectile as it hurtles into the darkness below. We are halfway through the mantle, and the pressure on the outside of the tunnel walls has reached 1,000,000 atmospheres. The light from below is growing brighter, changing from red to a brilliant, terrifying white. As you approach the boundary, a sudden, massive magnetic pulse shuts down your suit's navigation, leaving you falling blind toward the liquid iron ocean. The magnetic interference from the previous layer lingers like a ghost in your systems as you descend further. You have officially breached the boundary of the upper mantle, leaving the Earth's thin crust far above. This layer stretches from 45 kilometers down to a staggering 670 kilometers deep. The surrounding rock is no longer the familiar granite of the surface, but a dense, green-tinted mineral called peridotite. Your suit's external sensors register a sudden, punishing climb in temperature to 1,500 degrees Celsius. At these extreme temperatures, the very laws of geology begin to shift into something far more fluid. The solid rock you expected has transformed into a viscous, semi-liquid state known to scientists as the peanut butter layer. This material presents a mechanical nightmare for the drilling operation. Think of poking a hole in a jar of peanut butter. The moment you pull your finger out, the hole simply vanishes. The immense pressure of the Earth is trying to heal the wound you've carved into its side. To keep the passage open, you must deploy the millimeter wave-directed energy laser. This device doesn't just cut rock, it vaporizes it instantly using high-frequency radiation. As the laser blasts forward, a surface-based gyrotron sends waves down a metal tube through the miles of rock. But even the laser isn't enough to stop the peanut butter from flowing back in behind you. You must now employ an experimental technique to crystallize the tunnel walls on contact. This process creates a glass-like ceramic lining that can withstand the crushing weight of the mantle. At this current pace, it will take you over 14 years of continuous drilling just to clear this section. You are now deeper than any living thing has ever ventured in the history of the world. Occasionally, the shifting rocks create groans and vibrations that echo through your hull like whale song. You notice strange, dark inclusions in the rock, ancient fragments of the Earth's formation. The heat shielding on your suit begins to crackle under the sustained 1,500-degree assault. You activate the secondary coolant loop, sending liquid nitrogen through the suit's veins. It is hard to imagine that this hellish environment is what drives the movement of continents above. The convection currents here are the slow churning engine of our entire planet. As you approach 500 kilometers, the pressure reaches a staggering 200,000 atmospheres. Every bolt and seam in your vessel is being tested to the absolute breaking point. You're now entering the transition zone, where the rock structure undergoes a phase change. Olivine minerals are being crushed into even denser forms like ringwoodite. Suddenly, your laser drill encounters a pocket of high-pressure water trapped within the minerals. There's more water locked in these rocks than in all the Earth's oceans combined. The steam explosion sends your capsule spinning wildly through the narrow shaft. You fight for control, firing thrusters to stabilize your descent. The stabilizers catch, and you come to a halt just inches from the churning peanut butter walls. You check the depth gauge, 600 kilometers and counting. The heat is now so intense that the camera lenses on the exterior are beginning to melt. You switch to sonar imaging, relying on sound waves to see the path ahead. The peanut butter layer is becoming thicker and more resistant the deeper you go. You increase the laser frequency to its maximum theoretical limit. The rock vaporizes with a roar that you can feel in your very marrow. Suddenly, the sonar pings a massive, solid obstruction looming just below the liquid rock. It shouldn't be here. The lower mantle is supposed to be hundreds of kilometers away. The temperature outside jumps another 1,000 degrees in a single second. A massive crack forms in your main viewing port as the external pressure spikes unexpectedly. The peanut butter rock is no longer just closing the hole, it's actively crushing your vessel from all sides. You realize you've hit a superheated mantle plume, a localized geyser of pure planetary fury. Your laser drill loses power as the primary conduit on the surface begins to melt. The darkness is absolute, and the creaking of the hull is the only sound left in the void. Just as the hull begins to buckle, a massive hand-shaped shadow passes across your external sensors, followed by a rhythmic thudding on the metal. The rhythmic thudding on the hull intensifies as we cross the threshold into the lower mantle. External sensors scream as the atmospheric pressure outside jumps to over 1.3 million times that of sea level. This is no longer the soft, peanut butter-like rock of the upper layers. The heat here is a silent killer, soaring toward a staggering 3,700 degrees Celsius. Our reinforced hull groans under the weight of an entire world pressing inward. We must activate the experimental active cooling systems before the electronics vaporize. Liquid nitrogen-infused heat sinks begin to glow with a surreal neon frost. The rock in this layer is so dense that our millimeter wave laser has to work at triple its normal power. If the cooling cycle fails for even a millisecond, we will be incinerated instantly. Strange mineral crystals never before seen by human eyes begin to form on our viewports. The air inside the cabin smells of ozone and scorched insulation. Every meter we descend is a battle against the fundamental physics of the planet. Looking out, the lower mantle appears like a sea of burning glass under impossible weight. A structural alarm blares, indicating a breach in the secondary cooling loop. We have no choice but to bypass the safety protocols and push the engines to their limit. The hum of the machine shifts into a high-pitched whine that vibrates through our teeth. At this depth, the silicate rocks have transformed into post-perovskite, a material of extreme density. We are deeper than any signal can reach, isolated in a tomb of fire. We must reach the D-double prime layer, the final frontier before the core. The gravity here is fluctuating as the mass of the crust and upper mantle pulls from above. Our magnetic shielding is the only thing keeping the intense radiation of the Earth's furnace at bay. The walls of the tunnel are trying to fuse back together behind us almost instantly. We deploy the crystallization spray to keep the path open for just a few seconds longer. The hull temperature has reached the critical limit of the alloy's melting point. We must dump the auxiliary fuel tanks to create a temporary heat shield. For a moment, the pressure stabilizes and we see a massive vein of pure iron ahead. But the iron is moving, shifting like a titan's muscle under the pressure. A seismic shockwave hits the pod, throwing everyone against the bulkheads. We regain control, but the drill bit is cracked. We are now descending into the lowermost mantle, where the heat is almost indistinguishable from the core. The oxygen scrubbers are failing and the air is getting thin. We can see the boundary of the outer core on the long-range scanners. The transition will be violent, as we move from solid rock to liquid metal. The screaming of the metal hull is the only sound in the crushing silence. We must prepare the ballast systems to float in the liquid iron ocean ahead. If the density calculation is off by even 1%, we will sink to the bottom like a stone. We are now 2,800 kilometers below the surface, further than any human thought possible. The liquid metal begins to splash against our viewports, melting the remaining crystals. Suddenly, the drill pod is seized by a massive electromagnetic current. As the bridge loses all power, the floor beneath us begins to glow white-hot, and the entire vessel starts to spin out of control toward the liquid abyss. The bridge alarms wail in a deafening chorus as the floor beneath the drilling platform begins to glow with a blinding white heat. We are no longer pushing through solid rock. The sensors indicate we have just breached the boundary of the outer core. Outside the reinforced viewports, a turbulent ocean of liquid iron and nickel swirls in a violent, golden-white storm. The temperature here is staggering, ranging between 4,500 and 6,000 degrees Celsius. At these temperatures, conventional drilling is impossible because there is no solid surface to bite into. To maintain our tunnel, we must now deploy a physical, indestructible pipe through this molten expanse. This piping is forged from a hypothetical, ultra-dense alloy designed to be heavier than the liquid iron surrounding it. We release the first segment and gravity immediately takes hold of the massive structure. It sinks under its own weight, cutting through the soupy metallic ocean with surprising speed. Even though this liquid is 10 times denser than water, its consistency allows the pipe to fall without significant resistance. But the liquid iron is far from a peaceful sea. It is a chaotic, swirling engine of planetary physics. This movement is what creates the geodynamo effect, the very source of Earth's magnetic field. Suddenly, the magnetic forces here spike to 50 times the strength of those on the surface. Our electronic navigation systems flicker and die as the intense magnetism wreaks havoc on our circuitry. We are now drilling blind, relying solely on the physical momentum of the sinking pipe to guide us. The external pressure is now over 1.5 million times stronger than at sea level. Through the viewports, we can see massive electrical discharges arching through the molten metal like subterranean lightning. We must sink over 2,200 kilometers of this piping to reach the next transition zone. Days turn into a blur of heat and vibration as the pipe continues its relentless journey toward the center. The hull of our vessel is being hammered by the sheer force of the rotating liquid currents. We are approaching the boundary where the liquid iron begins to solidify under even greater pressure. The pipe's descent begins to slow as the density of the environment reaches a critical threshold. If we can reach the solid inner core, we can re-anchor our equipment and regain control of the mission. The transition from liquid to solid is not a clean line, but a chaotic zone of metallic slush. We must steer the pipe precisely to avoid these massive iron bergs that could crush the shaft. The magnetic field here is so warped that it creates visible distortions in the space around us. The secondary cooling systems are operating at 110% capacity just to keep the crew from vaporizing. We are now witnessing the very heart of the planet's power, a place no human eyes were ever meant to see. The pipe finally makes contact with the solid surface of the inner core with a jarring impact. We engage the locking mechanisms to secure our path through the liquid abyss. The stability of the tunnel is now our only lifeline back to the world above. We must now prepare to drill through the last and most dense layer of the entire planet. The inner core is a solid ball of iron, kept from melting only by the sheer weight of everything above it. As we begin to bite into the solid metal, the gravity readings start to behave erratically. Every inch deeper is a battle against the most extreme physics in the known universe. We are traveling through a world of heat and pressure that mimics the conditions inside a small star. There is no turning back now. We are committed to reaching the exact center of our world. The pressure is so great that it is actually bending the very light from our flood lamps. A sudden tremor shakes the entire vessel, far more violent than any tectonic plate shift. A low, resonant hum begins to vibrate through the hull, and the gravity sensors suddenly drop to zero as a massive void opens up ahead of the drill. The low hum from the hull intensifies into a bone-rattling roar as the liquid ocean of iron gives way to something far more solid. Suddenly, the crushing weight of the world seems to vanish as the gravity sensors flatline at zero. We have officially breached the inner core, a solid sphere of iron and nickel the size of the moon. The drill bit grinds against crystals of iron that are packed together tighter than any material known to man. Outside the reinforced quartz windows, a forest of jagged metallic pillars stretches into the golden haze. This is the center of our world, a place where the temperature rivals the surface of the sun. Despite the heat, the pressure is so immense that the iron cannot melt, remaining locked in a rigid crystalline form. Without gravity to guide us, the ship begins to tumble slowly in the center of the tunnel. The pilot struggles with the thrusters, trying to compensate for the lack of a down direction. Here, at the precise center of gravity, every atom of the ship is being pulled outward in every direction simultaneously. A terrifying realization sets in as the ship's structural integrity begins to groan under the strain of this tidal tug-of-war. We must push through the final few kilometers of this solid heart to reach the other side. Huge geodes of gold-rich iron quartz glitter in the walls of the tunnel like cosmic jewels. These are the heaviest elements in the universe, sunk to the bottom of the gravity well over billions of years. The drill head hits a pocket of hyper-compressed gas, sending a shockwave through the entire vessel. Alarms scream as the cooling system struggles to maintain the internal temperature against the 6,000-degree exterior. For a moment, the ship passes through the exact mathematical center of the Earth. Time seems to slow down as we hang suspended between the northern and southern hemispheres. But we cannot stay, as the momentum of our descent begins to pull us toward the opposite side of the world. Gravity slowly begins to reassert itself, but now it is pulling us up toward the surface of the South Pole. The transition is jarring, as the hull once again feels the crushing embrace of the solid iron core. We engage the secondary plasma cutters to slice through the final layers of the inner core's southern boundary. The data we are collecting here will rewrite the history of planetary formation. Every centimeter of this crystal world holds the secrets of the Earth's magnetic field. The temperature rises again as we approach the boundary of the liquid outer core on the southern side. We must maintain our velocity to ensure we don't get trapped in this gravity well forever. The sheer scale of the crystalline formations here is beyond anything imagined by surface-dwelling humans. We are now moving faster, falling upward into the molten liquid that surrounds this solid island. The transition zone is ahead, marked by a shimmering interface of slushy iron. The ship begins to vibrate again as the density of the medium changes drastically. We lock the stabilizers and prepare for the final surge into the southern liquid core. Looking back, the tunnel we carved through the heart of the world remains a perfect silver line in the darkness. This journey has taken us through the most extreme environments in the solar system. But the return journey to the surface is just as dangerous as the descent. Every second, the pressure of the entire planet above us tries to crush the ship like a tin can. We are now travelers in a reverse world where gravity pulls us toward a sky made of stone. The beauty of the core is fading behind us, replaced by the chaotic energy of the liquid iron currents. The ship's engines roar with a new intensity as they fight against the viscous drag of the molten metal. We have passed the point of no return, committed to our exit on the other side of the globe. Suddenly, a massive magnetic storm erupts from the core's surface, and the ship's navigation systems begin to spin uncontrollably. The Traveler is now moving at several kilometers per second, a human bullet aimed at the center of the Earth. Systems slowly reboot as the Traveler initiates the final phase of the mission by sealing the vacuum locks. All air is pumped out of the 12,000-kilometer shaft to prevent the heat of friction from incinerating the Traveler. Standing on the edge of the abyss, the Traveler looks down into a darkness that leads straight through the heart of the world. With a single step forward, the Traveler commits to the jump and surrenders to the pull of gravity. At first, it feels like a standard skydive, but there's no wind resistance to push back against the suit. Acceleration builds rapidly as the body gains speed with every passing second of the descent. The walls of the crust blur into a solid streak of gray as the speedometer on the HUD climbs past terminal velocity. Within minutes, the Traveler enters the upper mantle where the walls are made of glowing semi-molten peridotite. Despite the incredible speed, the interior of the suit is eerily quiet in the vacuum of the shaft. The lower mantle passes in a flash of crushing heat that the active cooling systems barely manage to deflect. Gravity continues to pull harder and harder as the mass of the planet concentrates toward the approaching core. The Traveler reaches the outer core, passing through the gravity-sunk pipe into a world of liquid iron. Magnetic flares dance outside the protective piping, creating a subterranean aurora of liquid metal. The HUD indicates that the center of the planet is now only moments away. Exactly 21 minutes after the jump, the Traveler reaches the dead center of the world. At this specific point, the Traveler is moving at 8 kilometers per second faster than any human in history. For a fraction of a second, the pull of gravity vanishes entirely as every atom of the Earth pulls with equal force. But the moment passes instantly as the Traveler blasts through the center and begins the climb up the other side. Gravity is no longer an accelerator. It is now a powerful brake, yanking at the Traveler's momentum. The speed begins to drop from the insane highs of the core as they re-enter the mantle layers. The suit's energy levels flicker as it fights to maintain life support against the heat of the upward journey. Light begins to appear at the end of the tunnel, a tiny pinprick of blue against the darkness of the shaft. The Traveler realizes they must time their arrival perfectly to grab the ledge at the surface. As the speed hits zero, the Traveler's fingers brush against the icy rim of the Indonesian exit point. But the smooth surface offers no grip, and the moment of weightlessness at the peak is too brief. Gravity reclaims its prize, pulling the Traveler back down into the abyss they just climbed out of. The entire 42-minute journey begins again, this time in the opposite direction. Without air resistance to dissipate energy, the Traveler is now a perpetual pendulum swinging through the planet. Once again, the Traveler passes the core at maximum speed, a ghost in the machine of the world. They rise back toward the North Pole, only to fall back once more when they failed to catch the ledge. The cycle repeats, a rhythmic journey from pole to ocean through fire and iron. Eventually, the fear fades, replaced by a strange sense of belonging to the Earth's internal heartbeat. The traveler has become a permanent inhabitant of the planet's deepest secrets. While the surface world changes, the physics of the tunnel remain constant and unforgiving. They remember the first drill bit that broke in the Kola borehole so many years ago. Now, they are the ones who have finally seen what lies beneath the feet of all humanity. The oscillation will continue until the end of time, a human heart beating in the center of the world. The journey to the center of the Earth is complete, and the traveler has finally found home in the eternal fall.